Greetings, everyone. I am so excited to be back in conversation again with Bibhu Dev Misra, who I know anyone who's listened to my work knows how often I'm referring to your book, The Yuga Shift, The End of the Kali Yuga and the Impending Planetary Transformation, which is such an excellent book, and I'll put the link to that below. But you are a researcher, a writer with an interest in ancient civilizations and have contributed to so many international magazines and podcasts. And you really have this incredible gift in understanding historical and scientific evidence, but also linking it to ancient wisdom and ancient texts. And I so respect and appreciate your work. And I'm very excited that today we're going to be talking about the article that you've written on the Galactic Center entitled Supermassive Black Hole or a Galactic Consciousness. So thank you for being here today and for being in this conversation today.
Well, thanks, Heather. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. And this is a topic that is very close to both our hearts, the Galactic Center and how it influences human consciousness and human civilization. But there's so much more to it. And that's what we're going to talk about today, because I put it together in that article on Mysterious Universe. And uh, that's what I do whenever some new idea comes up. I put it out in the form of an article, and that gives me a lot of feedback as well as to what other people are thinking. And then, it helps me in my continual research and writing.
Well, part of what I find so important and fascinating in this article is you really look at the scientific theories about our galactic center and really talk about how the more and more current scientific evidence doesn't support this sense of our galactic center being a black hole. Can you talk more about that? Because I think that is such a critical reframing of our understanding of what the galactic center is.
Yeah, what happened was that scientists, when they started looking at the center of our galaxy with their um, telescopes, they found that there was something in the center that was giving out a lot of radiation in the radio frequency. And they wondered what it could be. And they said that, well, maybe it's a black hole. Now, the question is, what is a black hole? Now, this is something that came out of the equations of Einstein. What physicists found is that if you use the equations of Einstein, then on the basis of those equations, if you assume that a star gets compressed to a very small size, let's say a star the size of our sun, gets somehow compressed to a very small size, to a round sphere of around 2 miles in diameter, then the gravitational force of that object will become so powerful that nothing is going to escape it, not even light. And what that means is that if light falls on such an object, it's going to be completely absorbed and nothing is going to come out. So it's going to appear black, because the reason why we see other objects is because of the light they reflect. And if an object does not reflect any light, it appears dark. So they called it a dark star, and they said that there could be some dark stars out there, which where the laws of physics cease to operate. But Einstein himself was not very enthusiastic about this theory. He felt that it doesn't make any sense for an object to have infinite gravitational force. That kind of an object cannot really exist in space. But according to Oppenheimer, who had invented the atomic bomb, he said that maybe it's possible that when a star uses up all its nuclear fuel, it collapses under the force of its own gravity, and then it turns into a black hole. So maybe black holes are the endpoints of stars. So that was the idea of a black hole, that it is the endpoint of a dying star. It has enormous gravity. It sucks in everything, even light, and we can't see it because it's black. And now, when astronomers were looking at the center of the galaxy and they found that it was radiating, giving out a lot of RF radio frequency radiation, they wondered what kind of an object could do that. And they said maybe it's a black hole. Maybe this black hole has an accretion disk around it. An accretion disk is basically a spiraling band of gas and dust which is falling into that black hole because of its gravity. So maybe the RF, the frequency, the radio frequencies are getting emanated from the accretion disk and not from the black hole itself, because nothing can come out of a black hole. So where is it coming from? It's coming from that disk of gas and dust which is falling inside the black hole. And they thought, okay, maybe that's possible. But over time, as we began to look closer and closer at the core of our galaxy, we are seeing that the core of our galaxy does not behave in any way like a black hole should. For instance, scientists said that since the black hole has enormous gravitational force, there can't be any star formation going on close to it because it's going to disrupt all the gas clouds around it, and stars form inside gas clouds. So it can't have you can't have any kind of star formation going on close to the black hole. But then when we looked into the center of our galaxy, we found that there are enormous star clusters. And some of these clusters are big and dense, and they have stars which are many times bigger than the sun. And they were like astonished that the galactic center is actually a hotbed of star formation, which goes completely against their assumptions that this is a very turbulent zone where stars cannot form. And then they said that, our black hole also gives out X-ray flares from time to time. So there could be a sudden X-ray flare today, and maybe after a few months, there's another X-ray flare, and so on. And then they wondered what could be the reason for these sudden X-ray flares coming from the center of a galaxy. And they thought that maybe it's gobbling up some gas cloud or some star. And every time it gobbles up something, it gives out an X-ray flare. And then what happened is in 2014, they saw that a cloud of gas was passing very close to Sagittarius A star, or the galactic core. And they thought that, okay, if it passes, it's going to get gobbled up. It's passing very, very close to the galactic center. It's going to get gobbled up. And all our telescopes were basically focused on that particular gas cloud. And guess what happened? Nothing. It just went merrily along its way. It might have exchanged some courtesies with the black hole, we don't know. And no X-ray flares, nothing. So we saw very clearly that the black hole doesn't gobble up any passing gas cloud or star. And then they also said that there's an accretion disk around the black hole from where all of these radio frequencies are coming out. And then when we looked very close at the black hole in the center of our galaxy and that of other galaxies, we found there's no accretion disk. What we have are highly structured and organized magnetic fields, not accretion disks, but magnetic fields. And those magnetic fields appear like spaghetti. They kind of sometimes they are very organized and sometimes they're intertwined. And that was totally unexpected, and nobody really knows why those magnetic fields are surrounding our black hole. And so nothing basically added up. Black holes do not disrupt star formation. There's no turbulence around a black hole. It doesn't gobble up gas clouds. There's no accretion disk. Instead, we have magnetic fields. And on top of that, it is giving out all of this radiation, which a black hole is not supposed to give out. It's not supposed to give out electromagnetic radiation. We have also seen that there are plasma jets which come out from the North Pole and the South Pole of a black hole. So it doesn't behave in any way like the black hole that came out of Einstein's equations. So what is it? That's the big question.
That is the big question. So tell us your thoughts about it.
Yeah, so when I thought about it, my feeling was that the black hole in the center of our galaxy, and in fact any other galaxy, is basically the galactic consciousness. It's a galactic soul which regulates all functions within the galaxy. It takes in information, takes in matter, and then it transforms it and gives it out in the form of radiation and plasma jets and supports galactic functions. Now, scientists also realize that the supermassive black holes at the center of galaxies are the central engines driving a galaxy. They refer to it as a central engine. And my sense is that it's consciousness which is doing all of that. That central engine is basically the galactic consciousness or the galactic soul, which is regulating everything within our galaxy. And the reason why we can't recognize it as being consciousness is because we neither have the mathematical tools to describe consciousness, we don't have the equations for consciousness, nor do we have any kind of a reference frame out there in space against which we can compare it. So we can't say that, okay, this behaves similar to that consciousness, and therefore this is also consciousness. We can't say that because there's nothing out there in space that we already recognize as being consciousness. So that's why we are unable to recognize it as galactic consciousness. But if we go to the ancient wisdom, to the ancient teachings, to what our ancestors were telling us, then it becomes very clear that they were referring to the presence of a supreme conscious spirit at the center of our galaxy, which is involved not only in the creation of the galaxy, but also its continual evolution over time. And that's what I did in the article. I looked at a few examples from different traditions and cultures to argue that the supermassive black hole or Sagittarius A star, as we call it, is actually galactic consciousness.
Before we get into some of that, I just want to quote a line from your article where your description is just so beautiful that Sagittarius A is the central creative and organizing consciousness of our galaxy. And I think part of what you're illuminating in your article is that when we are viewing our galaxy through the lens of scientific materialism, then we're not able to see the full reality of how the galactic center is the source of consciousness of our galaxy and that everything else is conscious also. And you cite the ancient wisdom texts, which I want to get into some of those examples. And for me, it just shows again that those ancient cultures had advanced understanding beyond our awareness today. It so fits with your discussion of the Hindu Yuga cycle and how we are now coming out of the Kali Yuga, the time of our forgetting and our lowest level of consciousness. But as you trace back to the Vedic texts and some of these other more ancient wisdom traditions, they're giving us the knowledge, the remembrance of what we once knew, and that awareness that everything is conscious.
Yes, I mean, it was known the world over that there is a central consciousness, there's a central creative consciousness. They even knew where it was located. They knew that it's there in the center of our galaxy, and that is the source of all consciousness. So all of us, all souls basically emerge from this consciousness. So this consciousness continuously divides itself into smaller packets of consciousness that we call souls, which then come into the cycle of reincarnation. And once that is over, they return back to the source, and that source is the central core of our galaxy.
Which fits with so many ancient uh, writings about how, at the time of death, I mean, that we are all infinite souls, and at the time of death, we return to the galactic center and become stars. And it so fits then with what you're describing as this uh, way in which the galactic center is a nursery for birthing new stars and new souls that then return to the galactic center at the time of death.
Yes, and that's what all the ancients believed that after death we transform into stars, and which means that when we are born as well, we initially appear as stars. which is why when scientists have been looking into the center of a galaxy, they saw these massive star clusters where new stars are continuously being formed. In fact, more stars are formed in the center of galaxy than anywhere else. And my feeling is that the stars that are there in the rest of the galaxy, they actually come out from there. It's not that they're getting formed in the spiral arms. They come out from the center of a galaxy and then they're nurtured in the spiral arms where they become bigger and they take on other responsibilities and other roles. But the initial formation, I believe, of every star is also in the center of our galaxy because that is the source.
So it's like the womb of our
That's
galaxy.
that's the womb. Yes.
So talk a little bit about the Vedic texts and how they refer to the meaning of our galactic center.
See, the Vedic texts always tell us of a creative principle called Brahma. Brahma is said to be unformed and unmanifested, and is the supreme creative principle, which is why in India there are representations of so many different gods, but we don't have any representation of Brahma because Brahma is formless. Is unmanifested. He's pure spirit, and he's the source of all creation. So what the text says that Brahma, Brahma is the supreme being who divides his oneness into many. So he keeps on dividing himself and then entering into everything that he creates, he enters into that. So as the soul or the inner self of that particular entity. And the location of Brahma is said to be at the navel of a god, Vishnu, or and that particular point is called Vishnu Nabhi, or the navel of Vishnu. Now, where is Vishnu Nabhi located? According to Yukteswar, our sun revolves around the Vishnu Nabhi. And we know that our sun goes around the galactic center, which means Vishnu Nabhi, or the navel of Vishnu, must be the galactic center. And there's only one object in the vicinity of the galactic center which can be termed as Brahma, the creative principle. And that is the black hole, because black holes are the central engines driving galactic functions. This is scientific understanding. So Brahma must be the central black hole. So the central black hole is the source of consciousness. It is the source of souls. And that is so important for us because we have this, like you just said, we have this very purely materialistic understanding of our world and the universe. But at the center of everything, at the core of everything, is the consciousness or the soul consciousness. And where is that coming from? But in case of our galaxy, that's coming from that Sagittarius A star or the galactic core or the galactic soul. That is creating all souls. And when they're first created, they remain within that womb for some time. And we'll talk about that later because that is the original Garden of Eden, where
Mm.
humans are first created and first nurtured in their original pristine state. But at some point, when they start accumulating matter or egoic matter around them, that is when they're exiled into this world outside the womb being the galactic nucleus. So they are exiled outside the galactic nucleus, and then they have to go through their own cycles of reincarnation or any other cycle. Reincarnation is a cycle that we as humans go through. Other beings elsewhere might have their own cycles that we don't know of. And once that taint is removed, once that egoic dross is removed, uh, through the recognition that we are actually divine souls, that the Creator lives within us. So,
Mm.
through that process of self realization, we return back to the original pristine state. And that's when we once again return back to that source, to the galactic nucleus, which the ancients in the Vedic text, that region is called Brahma Loka, or the world of Brahma. And what I believe is Brahmaloka, or the world of Brahma, is the galactic nucleus or the central bulge, because that is located in the center of galaxy. That is the region surrounding that central source. And that is where our texts say that the enlightened sages and the prophets, they always aspire to return back to Brahmaloka. The one who attains self-realization goes to Brahmaloka. So for me, that is the galactic nucleus. So, and every time we attain, we break free from this cycle, we attain liberation, we go back to that source. And after that, we'll have a different destiny. We don't know what the destiny is. It could be taking on other responsibilities elsewhere in the galaxy or simply remaining there. So there's a huge world out there. I mean, we get so focused on our world here, but this is just a stepping stone to a bigger reality, a bigger universe with bigger roles and bigger responsibilities. So the saying that we just have one life, that is so wrong at so many levels. We have multiple lives here, and we have a much bigger existence outside of this planet Earth, which and that is something that we have forgotten. The whole this whole understanding of the cycle of reincarnation and what happens afterwards. That knowledge has been so much forgotten and lost. And therefore, this is actually the right time to start remembering and recovering that understanding.
So part of what you're saying is that our soul is infinite. So we go through these cycles of incarnation, reincarnation, and that we're each a fractal expression of that soul of the cosmos. So it's also really holding that awareness that we all have that wisdom, that consciousness of the soul of the cosmos within us. We're all an expression of it. So again, it really also gives us that sense that everything around us is sacred. Everything is conscious because everything is an expression of that heart and soul of the universe.
Yes, and that is why we say that we have this saying in the Vedic text that Atma is Brahma. Atma is the individual soul, and Brahma is the cosmic soul. So every individual soul is also the cosmic soul. It's a fractal of that. It's an emanation from that. And this understanding of ourselves and others as sacred beings is that understanding is crucial for us to lead happy, harmonious, and fulfilling lives. Because the moment we go away from that, that's when the discord and the strife and the anger and the envy, that's when it begins. Uh, which is what happens in the Kali Yuga. We get disconnected from that soul connection, that source consciousness, and that's why. Because if you recognize that somebody else is the same soul as you, then you cannot possibly do any harm to that particular being. You cannot possibly hate or harm him in any way. So it's this lack of understanding of our true identity that lies at the source of most of the harmful actions that we carry out on others and the environment.
So as we're now exiting the Kali Yuga, we are in this process of increasingly remembering that wisdom that we've lost connection with and coming out of this illusion of separation. And it feels like these ancient texts and wisdom traditions can guide us in that remembering. I also think it's so interesting, Bibhu, that you and I have explored our different ways of looking at the interweaving of the Hindu Yuga cycle and my understanding of the processional cycle. And from my perspective, then, the beginning of that Satya Yuga, the golden age, the time of our highest consciousness, is the age of Scorpio, which is the stars. Our galactic center is between the stars of Sagittarius. Sagittarius A is the reference to the galactic center, and Scorpius. And it is that dark rift in the Milky Way that ancient cultures were so tuned into. And it's when we were really in the age of alignment with that we were most connected to that source consciousness. But as we're coming out of the Kali Yuga now, we have that opportunity to begin to reconnect and remember that consciousness and come back into that awareness again.
Yes, I mean, the disconnection from the soul happens at the end of the golden age, and that's when we fall into ego consciousness, which is the descending cycle. And now that we are coming out of the end of the descending cycle, it's again time for us to go back into soul consciousness. And that is why there's so many researchers out there in the world who are trying to recover that ancient wisdom, trying to get back that ancient understanding, trying to realign their lives with the ways that our ancestors told us are the harmonious ways. So this spurt in enthusiasm, the spurt in inquiry, is also symptomatic of what's going on, the changing energies that are happening in the world, which is inspiring more and more people to start exploring on their own, come up with their own ideas and findings. So it's already happening, this changeover.
It's a very accelerated time of change. But talk more about you in your article, explore other references to this cosmic soul that come through in other mystical or religious traditions.
Well, let's say in the Judeo-Christian tradition, there's this concept of a Christ consciousness, an eternal cosmic Christ consciousness. I believe that is also the Sagittarius A star, or the central source that we call as Brahma. And this is the consciousness that activates our heart center and promotes a feeling of oneness, because the source is all about oneness. So it promotes a sense of oneness. And uh, in fact, in the biblical text, when Christ talks about his Father in heaven, I believe he was talking about this source consciousness. And he says that I'm going to go back to my Father. He meant that he's leaving this cycle of incarnation and he's going back to the source, because he has attained self-realization. And that is what happens to enlightened sages and prophets when they know beforehand that they're going back to the source. Even the Buddha is to say that to his disciple, that this is the last time I'm here on earth. I won't be coming back anymore. So uh, so that understanding was there, that once you complete the cycle, you go back to the source. And when you refer, and in the biblical text, the Father, I believe, refers to this central source, the galactic soul. And then in Judaism, they talk about a treasury of souls, or a chamber of creation. And this is where all new souls which are created, they remain there. And they appear like stars. Some of them are like flickering like candles, and some of them are as bright as the sun. And from this chamber of creation, or the treasury of souls, the souls are exiled into this world to go through the cycle of reincarnation. And the texts say that once it is exiled, it is very difficult for that particular soul to return back to the original field. Because once it's tainted, it's very bad, very hard to return back, and person has to really exert himself to come back to the source. And I believe this chamber of creation, or the treasury of souls, is also the region around the central source. Is basically the central bulge, because that is where all the new stars are stored. And it says that some of the stars are, some of the souls, they flicker, and some of them are brighter than the sun. And that is what we have seen, right? That there are these massive star clusters around the uh, around Sagittarius A star, and some of the stars within those clusters are brighter than our sun. So they were basically talking about stars, but they're using the term souls uh, for those entities. And so yeah, and it also talks about the throne of glory, which I believe also which is a representation of the creative principle. And I believe the throne of glory in Judaism is also Sagittarius A star, or the galactic consciousness that they're talking about. So this understanding was also there in Judeo-Christian texts. And all these Native American tribes, they talk about the Great Spirit or the Great Mystery, and the Great Spirit is supposed to have infused life into all living organisms, and it lives within all creatures. And I believe this Great Spirit or the Great Mystery is also this central source, the galactic core or the galactic soul, whatever you call it. Uh, so this understanding was worldwide. The Mayans talk about Huracan, the heart of heaven. Huracan dreamt up this world in the darkness, and he breathed life in all creatures. So what is this heart of heaven? Heart is the center. So center is once again the galactic center, which is or the galactic core. So
It's it's so amazing how many ancient traditions it's known in. I mean, as you know, I've explored a lot of ancient Egyptian archaeology and mythology, and it's so related to that understanding of Newt, the extending her body as the Milky Way arches over our Earth, and she gives birth to all that is from her womb, the galactic center that gives birth to the sun and then absorbs the sun, in the cycle of, and you talk too, say a little bit more about that, the cycle of Brahma and the night of Brahma and what that means.
yeah, there's a bigger cycle called the day and night of Brahma. At the beginning of a day of Brahma, uh, he breathes out all of creation, and at the end of the day of Brahma, that's when the night of Brahma begins. He reabsorbs everything back into himself, and this is a bigger cycle of 26 million years. And we have seen that there is a mass extinction of life that happens on Earth every 26 million years. So that's again a cycle that has been validated by scientific findings. So, this bigger cycle uh, it has a much bigger impact on human civilization because at the end of the day of Brahma, civilization practically disappears and everything returns back to the source. And at the end of a night of Brahma, it again restarts. So all of us return back to Brahma, and then we again come back from Brahma and start this cycle once again. So it's a bigger cycle, and it's really, I don't know, it's kind of inconceivable. It's so vast and so profound that it's very difficult to imagine what might really be happening at the end of a day of Brahma when everything returns back to the source. What kind of a cataclysmic activity might be happening at that time.
But what you're describing is like this massive galactic cycle of reincarnation.
Yes,
So we have our individual journeys, but then there is this incredible galactic collective journey.
yes, true.
It's
I mean, it's just fascinating, but it's very difficult to kind of conceive that in terms of how we understand the universe or our world. That all souls returning back to the source at the same time, and then coming back again and coming out again at the beginning of the next cycle. That is, really profound and difficult to comprehend.
yes, beyond our human capacity to comprehend. But a part of what you're also describing is that everything then is conscious. So the stars have their consciousness, the planets have their consciousness. And in your article, you refer to Rupert Sheldrake's article about is the sun conscious, which I've
Yes.
read. It's a fascinating article. But he contends that yes, the sun is conscious, and you describe how the electromagnetic field of the galactic center influences everything in the galaxy, including the sun, that then has its own electromagnetic field that impacts us here on Earth. It's like it's this web of cosmic intelligence that's affecting all that is. Can you talk a little bit more about that electromagnetic field and then how it relates to our brains and our hearts?
Yeah, what Sheldrick had argued is that Our brains are generators of EM fields. We have a electromagnetic field around our head, which is generated by our brain, and therefore, and we know that our brain is conscious. So, electromagnetic fields must be generated by consciousness or might be somehow associated with consciousness. Using that argument, he said that our sun is also a generator of electromagnetic fields. We know that it has these powerful electromagnetic fields around it, which means there could be a solar mind as well, which is not only generating this electromagnetic field, but is also using that field to collect the information from the rest of the solar system
Mm.
and then responding to it by sending out solar wind or the solar flares or the coronal mass ejections. That's output, and the input is the information that it's collecting from the solar system by means of this EM field. And the same thing is happening at the galactic level as well. We have seen that the central core is surrounded by very powerful electromagnetic fields. And we also know that there is this galactic current sheet that covers the entire galaxy. So those magnetic fields could be the means by which the galaxy is not only connecting with the rest of with all the entities around in the rest of the galaxy, but also the means by which it is collecting information from all of the galaxy, then putting it together, and then sending out the EM radiation and the plasma jets to do whatever it is necessary to support those functions. So it's acting like you could say it's like acting like a brain in the sense that it's collecting information and is then sending out some kind of information or some kind of energy to support those functions and regulate those functions. So I added a modification to that. I said that it's not just the brain which generates electromagnetic fields. Our heart is a more powerful generator of electromagnetic fields. In fact, the EM field generated by the human heart is around 5,000 times stronger than the field generated by the brain. So the real consciousness is in the heart, and that is the soul consciousness. And what we have in the brain is the mind consciousness. And according to the Vedic text, the mind is actually an attribute of the soul. So when the soul comes into the body, it kind of ejects the mind and the sense faculties. So our powers of hearing or seeing, all of this comes from the soul. And when the soul enters the body, those faculties are distributed to different parts of the body. So the mind goes to the brain, and the sense faculties goes to the sense organs. And when the soul leaves the body, it reabsorbs all of those faculties, the faculty of the mind and the faculty of the sense organs are reabsorbed into the soul, and then it leaves the body at the time of death. And that makes sense because we have seen so many NDE accounts, and a person who is undergoing a NDE, he can see so clearly, he can see and feel and think so clearly. So, how is it possible for him to do that? It means that the soul is capable of all the functions that the human body or the human mind and the sense faculties can do. So my point was that what we have in the center of the galaxy or the center of the sun is not the solar mind or the galactic mind, is the solar soul and the galactic soul. And the mind is just an attribute of the soul, one of the many attributes of the soul. So that's something that I've added on top of what he has already argued. That is the galactic soul and the solar soul that we're talking about, not the galactic mind and the solar mind.
And you could also say the galactic heart,
Yes.
that our hearts then are able to connect with. And it is through our hearts that we can access that connection to unity consciousness, which is what is emanating from this cosmic consciousness, this cosmic heart. And it's fascinating to me that the energies of the galactic center can not only activate the sun, but impact our earth and our reverberate out of the core, crystal core of the earth. So it's like there is this interconnectedness of these energies activating everything in in our galaxy with this cosmic heart, cosmic love and wisdom. It's in us and it's all around us.
Yes, and we can connect to it at any point of time. Because we're all connected in this cosmic web. And the cosmic web itself is structured by magnetic fields. So, at the core of our creation are these magnetic fields. They seem to be there everywhere. These magnetic fields are not only around the sun and around the galaxy, but they also spread out all over the universe, connecting everything together. And it's through these magnetic fields that we get the information and the energies that are necessary for us to grow and to evolve. And it's controlling, and it is through these fields that everything is being activated and controlled and regulated within the galaxy and also the entire universe.
And you talked, Bibhu, about the galactic sheet. And my understanding is that we move through that galactic sheet every 12,000 years, and that that is a part of what we're going through now, which is why the sun gets activated. We're seeing changes in the planets in our solar system. And you and I see it as also associated with these times where we go through major shifts in our human consciousness and are at a really critical choice point in our own human evolution of consciousness. It's almost as if we're moving through a time where the galaxy is calling us into a reflection, a reset, a reorientation to come back into connection, to let go of, as you describe it, the dross of the ego and that sense of disconnection, to be activated to come back into consciousness.
Yeah, the galactic current sheet is also getting more powerful, more activated. As the galactic core becomes more active, everything becomes more active. So, uh, and that the additional energy that is coming out of the center and going out all over the galaxy is going to impact all of us in so many different ways. And that's the awakening that is happening now, and is the center which is really in charge of that.
You have talked, I think, in an article that you wrote in 2024 about how the Galactic Center is reactivating. Can you talk some about how it goes through these cycles of being more active and then being more dormant, and what it means that it's becoming more active again?
Yeah, what happens is that for a long time, the galactic core or the Sagittarius A star had been giving out only radio frequency. I spoke about radio frequency, which is really the lowest frequency in the EM spectrum. So the EM spectrum goes from radio frequency to gamma rays, gamma waves being the highest frequency. So it was giving out this lowest frequency radiation called radio frequency, and it was giving out this occasional X-ray flares. So scientists were thinking that our black hole is, or they call it a black hole. It's not a black hole really, but let's use the term interchangeably because that's how it's been used. So scientists were thinking that the black hole is in a dormant state. It is not very active right now. But all of a sudden in 2024, they found that over the last 1 year, it has been giving out very powerful flashes of visible light. Now, visible light is in the middle of that EM spectrum. And this visible light was never emanated by the galactic core before over the last few centuries. All of a sudden, it's emanating these bright, brilliant flashes of visible light on a daily basis, which means that it's becoming active. Now, what happens in case of these galactic cores or black holes is that they go through cycles of activity and inactivity. Sometimes it starts to become very active, and that's when it gives out enormous quantities of EM radiation at all frequencies. So the nucleus then becomes very bright. That's when it's called an active galactic nucleus or an AGN. And we know that our Milky Way has its own AGN cycle, that sometimes it becomes extremely bright. The nucleus becomes like the central sun. And at that point, it can actually be seen from any point of the galaxy. when the nucleus becomes so highly luminous, it can be seen from any point of the galaxy. Right now, we can't see the central bulge because all of that light gets blocked out by the interstellar clouds. So all of that light is dissipated. But when the nucleus becomes active, it can be seen at night. You can see it as a second moon or a second sun, and which is what a lot of ancient cultures spoke about. There being a second sun or a second moon in the higher ages.
Or the
And
central sun behind the
the
sun.
central
Yes.
sun, yeah, the sun of wisdom, the eternal sun, the midnight sun, and so many names. And so then when it becomes so luminous, that's when we get so much radiation that we go into the ascending cycle. And then it turns off at some point. And then the light, the radiation which has already left that galactic center, it it declines in a gradual manner because it keeps on echoing in the outer galaxy. It doesn't go down all of a sudden. So the intensity of light reaching us, it goes down gradually, and that's when we're in a descending cycle. So my belief is that as the black hole switches on and off, that's when we go through the ascending and descending cycles of consciousness. So it's in that way, it's also driving the Yuga cycle. And Yukteswar had also mentioned that he said that our cycles are governed by Brahma, and since my contention is Brahma is the central core, then it's also driving this cycle of evolution and devolution.
So the fact that it is activating again is really showing us that we are being called back into ascending consciousness, into awakening, and coming back into that higher consciousness again.
Yes, and this new energy which is coming out is going to impact everything within our galaxy. It's going to impact all the stars and all the constellations. It's going to impact our planet. And once that begins to happen, everything changes, and it's unstoppable. You'll start getting the DNA upgrades, and when DNA begins to change, all life on Earth is going to change. Everything is going to look different. So, uh, when I came to know that my contention in Yuga shift was that sometime in the next few hundred years, the black hole should turn on. Because my contention was that the black hole, it is the black hole turning on and off, which is the primary regulating factor behind this cycle. And then I came to know that in 2024 itself, it had started to turn on. And that was a very good piece of news for me because very exciting as well, because I really didn't know when it might happen. I was just thinking that sometime in this period of transition out of the Kali Yuga, it should happen. So it's already happening now. So that's very good news for us. It means that we now have the opportunity to tune into not only that center, but our inner center, and also to have that optimism that the change is already happening, it's on the way, and nothing that other forces try to do to suppress it or to diminish it is going to be successful, because when the cosmos is changing, you can't fight it.
Well, that's so beautifully said, and that we are fractal expressions of cosmic consciousness. So as it's activating and it's sending out its, you could see it as sending out its divine love and wisdom, then that activates us to come back into that remembrance, come back into that higher consciousness. And I do feel, and you've talked so much about the Kali Yuga ending in March of 2025, how perfect that the Galactic Center reactivates in 2024 to then be guiding us out of this time of forgetting into remembering and into a purging, I think, of the imbalance and destructive patterns that we've gotten in as humanity in that time of disconnection and illusion of separation. So it feels like it's the activation of these energies is calling us to clear the blocks, clear the imbalances, come back to our hearts, come back to that higher consciousness. And as the Peruvian shamans would say, to become homo luminous ones, beings of light.
Yes, it is, and it's going to impact everyone. But here's the thing: you sh we have to be proactively trying to align with that energy. It's trying to call us back, but if you are deliberately trying to block it out, and our mind is very powerful, we might try to deliberately block out those energies, not try to align with it, keep doing what we are doing right now. And that is going to have some very negative effects for whichever person or whichever collective is trying to block out those energies and not trying to align with it, because that's, if you're not in resonance with that energy, is going to, I think, show up in many different ways, such as more fear or more anxiety and more of these negative emotions, which can be very self-destructive. So the onus is also on us to try and align. The energies are calling us back, but the onus is also on us to consciously try to remove whatever blockages there are in our minds and in our ideologies from trying to align with these energies, trying to align with the wisdom, and thereby, make ourselves ready and make ourselves, I would say, uh, make ourselves ready for this transition, because we are all going to change and we don't really know in what manner we are going to change. So it's going to be a journey of discovery for everybody, including all those who are talking about it. So we are all going to transform, and so it's going to be exciting, but at the same time, a lot of stuff is going to happen because there are energies which are trying to block it out. So we'll see both happening at the same time: the emergence of the new reality, the emergence of the new paradigms, the new belief systems, the new ways of living, and the collapse of whatever is trying to block that out. So it's going to be a very turbulent time over the next few years until the collapse is over.
And we have different dates as terms of when that might happen, but I do feel like we're in that transition time and in that critical choice point. And can you say more, Bibhu, about how you think we can be preparing, we can be aligning with these energies of cosmic consciousness? There are energies on the planet trying to resist it, trying to cling to the old paradigms, but they are deconstructing and they will end, as you talk about too in your book. But how can we, I mean, what are some of the ways that you see that we can be working with these energies of transformation that are coming to us?
Well, it's there's so many things that we can do. We can, uh, I don't even know where to start. Uh, I would say, first of all, dissolving the egoic blockages that prevent us from accepting the wisdom of our ancestors, accepting that we have devolved. Unless you accept that there has been a devolution, there cannot be an evolution. If you're thinking that we are already at the pinnacle of civilization, then you're not going to align with the energies, because you're trying to block out those energies. And to clear all of this, we spoke about this earlier. We spoke about how we have accumulated so much karma especially over the Kali Yuga. So we have to clear that karma. We have to clear those, no, those that shadow self which we have accumulated, all the negative habits, the bad habits which keep us going off in the wrong direction. So we have to take care of those bad habits, and then, of course, trying to align with our soul purpose. We all come here with a particular purpose. And if we are thinking that to accumulate money or wealth and power, which was a Kali Yuga mantra for success, to accumulate more wealth and power. If you go back to more ancient times, people did not really respect wealthy people or powerful people. People actually respected the saints and the prophets much more than they respected the rich and wealthy. So we have to stop thinking in terms of the parameters of success that have been defined for us in the Kali Yuga, and redefine what it means to be successful. And from my perspective, to live in tune with your soul purpose and to bring your gifts to the world, that is the sign of success. That, because that is also the sign of happiness. And it's only by doing that do we really evolve and fulfill the purpose of our incarnation. Otherwise, we are wasting time chasing bells and whistles. And
I like that. Chasing our bells and whistles. But that's, it's so beautifully said, and it does really follow up on some of our earlier conversations because I think you're highlighting how we need to heal and we need to clear these destructive patterns from the past that we've been playing out over and over again during the Kali Yuga. And I also think, in light of what you're saying about the galactic center and how it is the soul and heart of our galaxy, that we need to come back to our hearts and no longer be caught up in the idealization of our minds. But really, the more that we can be in our hearts, the more we're connecting to those energies of the galactic center and then in alignment with our soul's purpose, in alignment with our interconnectedness with the consciousness of the cosmos.
yes, the heart or the soul is the source of intuition. And what is intuition? Intuition is the soul's intelligence. We call it intuition, but it is actually the soul's intelligence. And in order to access the soul's intelligence, you have to develop your intuition by going into your soul more often. And when you do that, you would automatically know what to do and where to go. And without the benefit of that, you are kind of confused as to, what you should be doing, whether you're doing the right thing or whether you need to go and stay somewhere else. So you get caught up in all the uh, information out there in the outside world, people telling you, do this or do that, and so you're taking information from other people and trying to construct your life around it rather than accessing your own soul intelligence or your intuition and formulate your own life path and your own destiny. So it is so crucial to go back to the center because that's how you know in which direction you need to go. And you can access that center at any point of time, even if there is no internet or no electricity. You're not disconnected from the, without the internet, you can't Google stuff, but without the internet, you can always Google your inner self.
I like that. And really, what you're saying is when we are in our hearts, we're in our center chakra. That is our connection to our soul consciousness. And that is our connection to unity consciousness. And we can access that anytime, anywhere. But it really is about going within instead of looking outside of ourselves for that.
Yeah, but it's so hard. It's so hard with so much information being directed at you and so much misinformation being directed at you. It's so hard for people to get out of the conditioning and the programming that has happened particularly over the last few hundred years. It's very difficult for people to get out of the programming and the conditioning and to realize that they have all that they need is already there. They just need to know how to tap into it. And you need not feel so anxious about letting go of the life that you already have because there's a bigger life waiting for you once you start tapping into your inner source.
Beautifully said. Well, thank you so much, Bippu, for sharing your wisdom with us again. Thank you for the work that you're doing and the way in which you're supporting us in opening to this cosmic consciousness. And I do believe the more of us that open to it, the more we're emanating that into the morphogenic field and the more we're supporting others in opening to that. And this is such a powerful time of transformation that we're in, time of awakening and moving into higher consciousness.
It is, and it's a time that comes once in a precessional cycle. That itself tells you how powerful it is. And we need to have the faith that we can get through this and that we need not feel depressed or angry or frustrated by what's happening in the outside world and rather trust the process and trust the cosmos to do its thing.
And stay in connection with our hearts and choose the path of love and not of fear. So thank you. Thank you for all the work that you're doing and for what you shared today. And I thank this community for being a part of this effort to move into a new world together that is in connection with this consciousness of the cosmos. Thank you.
Thanks, Heather.